All right, welcome back to Revolving Sports. Primary observations from week one of college football. This was a weekend defined by culture and identity. The teams with a more ingratiated identity, the teams with a more cultivated culture, established culture, tended to win these big matchups. And I know it's early, so teams don't know who they schematically and thematically are yet. But you know what I know about the Buckeyes? They have an identity under Ryan Day of toughness and of tradition. This was the difference in a game that was very close and actually very comparable in terms of strengths of both teams. And on the flip side of that, these teams had similar weaknesses. Couldn't really get a run game going. Now, the Buckeyes established a running game. Though it didn't work, they established a running game. And we'll get to that in a bit here. The difference in this game was the fact that Ohio State did those things marginally better. And the reason why they did is because of their firm culture and firm identity of tradition, discipline, and toughness. Here are some examples of that. For the first score of the game, the Buckeyes had the ball inside of the 5. 0-0 game. You know what Ryan Day and Brian Hartline decide to do? 4 straight runs. They run the ball down Texas's throat 4 straight times. This is the Buckeyes' MO. Ryan Day teams are going to be disciplined, tough, and traditional. I'll give you another example here. Situational defense, situational football. Texas was 1 for 4 on 4th down. In many ways, that was the difference of that game. The Buckeyes were able to hold Texas to 25% on 4th down. Teams that have better situational football tend to have better culture and better identity, more cohesion. Another example of discipline is how Ohio State's secondary was able to stay in phase and able to collectively execute a fantastic Matt Patricia scheme. It takes a lot of discipline and cohesion on that back end to do as such. We'll get to the other things that this game came down to in a second, but I just want to cover this identity thing with Texas. And I want to bring up the fact that I'm a diehard Dolphins fan. Both of our head coaches are offensive geniuses. Great play callers, great minds, right? Both use a ton of motion. Both teams have a culture and identity crisis. Folks, last year, Texas had the ball inside of the 5 in the playoff game versus the Buckeyes. Couldn't score. They got cute. The Buckeyes didn't get cute. 0-0 game. We're going to run the ball down your throat 4 straight times. Texas doesn't know who they are from a foundational standpoint. And you know what? The more I age, I'm 25 years old. The more I age, the more I realize the Mike McDaniels, the Steve Sarkisians, cute offensive play calling head coaches typically don't win in this sport because it's a tough man's game. It's a 3D chess match. You need toughness, you need tradition, you need discipline. This is why Pittsburgh, Baltimore, this is why these teams have ran the AFC for years. New England. My Finns have had very talented teams. We've had guys. Our team a couple years ago was the fastest, most talented football team since the '01 Rams, since the greatest show on turf, one of the fastest and one of the most skilled offensively teams of all time. You know why we went 9-8? We started to fail when it got cold, and then we lost to the Bills in the playoffs round 1. You know why that happened? It's not because suddenly we didn't have the same weapons or talent. It's because our culture and identity is rooted in flair, speed, and schematic offensive football. Is Texas a tough football team? Or are they a flair, flash, a lot of motions, offensive oriented team? And if that's the case, you just have to stick to it. The fact that Sark opened this game up with a conservative game plan was really unlike Sark, but also, can I just name, it was really dumb. It was a bad move. Like, think back to that Michigan Texas game. What did he start the game doing? Took a couple deep shots to open up this defense so his motions work. So there's space in the short and intermediate part of the field. Sark has been a pass to run coach. On Saturday, he tried to be a run to pass coach, not a lot of play action as well. And I think it was the first time where I've seen Sark a little bit unsure of himself. But Texas fans, if we want to seriously compete for championships, we need to have identity and culture. And again, if that's the Mike McDaniel mold, it hasn't worked much. In football's past, it hasn't worked much. But with that being said, if Sark were to have just stuck to his guns, and if Texas had an identity that is whole, that's one, this game probably fares differently. In terms of X's and O's and in terms of players, these Texas receivers got zero separation. I'm concerned about this Texas weapon core. I don't think it's as good as it's been in the recent past. Compared to the other giants of college football, compared to Georgia, Dylan Bell, Zachariah Branch, it's not up to snuff. Wingo is a size speed freak. Is he a separative route runner at this stage? No. DeAndre Moore is an experienced vet, but he's more of a three than he is a two. Endry is very talented. He might be their best weapon right now, and he's a tight end who's not particularly fast. Fantastic defense, going to be the best defense in college football this year. But this offensive line is very young, and these weapons actually lack. So, look, it was obvious that Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate were able to just make more plays, create more separation, were just more imposing, are just more imposing than the Texas weapon core. But with that being said, Arch was missing very open receivers, particularly that throw when they were down 24-17, driving downfield. That missed throw, that inaccurate pass on, I believe it was third down. We've all seen on X, we've all seen the memes. I don't have to go too deep into this, but one play says it all about Julian Sain's performance. Late first half, 7-0 game. The Buckeyes have the ball at their own 1 or 2 yard line. It's 3rd and 3. The Buckeyes punt this ball from their position right now. Texas likely gets on the board. Pressure in his face, drifting backwards. No panic, no anxiety. Perfectly accurate pass, very difficult throw to Carnell Tate on the sideline. The calm, the composure, the Cali cool is truly, in a lot of ways, what separated the Buckeyes in this game. It starts with culture and identity. The next thing, it goes to psychological makeup that day of the quarterbacks. Another thing I'm surprised at is the fact that they didn't use Arch in the designed run game more. With the young, inexperienced offensive line, I have no idea why Texas was very conventional in their running game. I actually think if they used Arch on a couple more designed runs, couple more options, he would have settled into that game pretty quickly. Texas is too talented, too good of a defense to not make the playoffs, to not still compete for a championship. But folks, I promise you, the lack of identity and culture is going to catch up to them. Let's move on to Florida State and Alabama. You could say the same thing about the Crimson Tide. Alabama safeties, Alabama linebackers, literally giving up on plays. In my lifetime, since I've been watching this sport, the one thing an Alabama football team has never done is be lazy. I think this Gus Malzahn game plan was phenomenal. I mean, guys, do we not remember those Auburn teams? Forget the Cam Newton team. Think about the Nick Marshall team. That team honestly had no business being in the championship game when you look at talent. He used Nick Marshall in the identical way that he used Tommy Castellanos on Saturday. Identically. Multiple run game. He milks everything he has out of his mobile quarterbacks. So, from that lens, any team would struggle with that, particularly because it's his first game as their new OC. You really don't know what to expect. And on the flip side, Florida State knows exactly what DeBoer and Grubb's scheme is. Much easier to prepare for. But even with that being said, Florida State was the lunch pail and hard hat team. Alabama, dude, that is not the Crimson Tide that I'm used to. Again, culture and identity. Florida State, a 2-10 team last year, did amazing to keep Mike Norvell. And if you guys remember, I was a proponent, do not fire Coach Norvell. That culture was set in stone 2 years ago, and Norvell has been the Florida State coach for 6 to 7 years. This year, he took a CEO role and he let Gus Malzahn do his thing, who, in my book, again, those Auburn teams had little business competing for the SEC. In my book, Gus Malzahn is a historically good college football game planner, historically good college football play caller. And Tommy Castellanos, when I opened up 247 doing preseason prep work, and I saw that he was actually not only a 3-star transfer prospect rated by 247, his rating was less than it was coming out of high school. What? Did they watch Boston College last year? Did they see how Boston College overexceeded expectations, outperformed? Castellanos was the reason why. The reason why. You talk about the ultimate moxie. You talk about the ultimate gamer. You talk about a guy who's much quicker than he gets credit for, better field vision than he gets credit for, and the ultimate small, tough guy quarterback. And that's a perfect pairing with Gus Malzahn, the underdog quarterback, the mobile quarterback. Again, Nick Marshall in Auburn. Gus Malzahn, for as much of an offensive college football savant that he is, those Auburn teams had identity and culture. Those teams were tough. These are run first football teams. Very different personality than a Ryan Day. But Gus Malzahn, in his own right, is a culture creator and a culture setter. And now you pair him with Mike Norvell. And honestly, it's game over in terms of a head coach OC duo. Pretty phenomenal stuff. Clemson LSU. I'm going to start with this. If you watch my page, you know how high I was on Clemson coming into this year. I'm going to just give you 3 reasons why Clemson lost that game. Garrett Nussmeier's competitiveness and gamesmanship and accuracy reminds me of Joe Burrow. So that's first and foremost. Guy literally oozes football. Oozes football. He has the type of accuracy, he has the type of field vision that actually becomes just as much of a weapon as crazy speed does or Kyler Murray type quickness does. I'm going to start to name him the Noose because he chokes and constricts you with how deadly accurate and how lethally poised he is. See, he has the Burrow type thing where he's so fiery, he's so competitive, but that comes out in a hyper-focused flow state. It's a very similar type of competitiveness leads to focus and poise as opposed to sporadic, kind of out of control play. But he has that amount of fire. And Antonio Williams getting hurt is a much bigger deal than y'all think. Much bigger deal. Not only is he debatably the most experienced football player on this team, not only is he the leader of this offense, the quote unquote smartest football player Cade Klubnik has ever been around, but this is their best route runner. This is their zone beating slot. This is their man beating slot. This is a very underrated draft prospect for next year that in my book should be a first round pick. I mean, this is their best playmaker. So to lose him for the entirety of that game truly matters. The ultimate reason why Clemson lost, Garrett Riley. What the hell was his game plan? And why do they chew 30 seconds of clock before running their next play? No tempo, no rhythm, no flow. The last play of the game offensively for Clemson, the play that decided the football game on fourth down in the red zone LSU territory, that paints the whole picture. Folks, they ran four verticals. They ran four verts knowing that LSU's defense the entire game was bringing disguised pressure, was very impressively, this LSU defensive front was very impressively beating a very, very experienced and talented Clemson O line, getting to the quarterback. And they knew because LSU was aggressive all game, they were going to blitz. And Garrett runs four verticals. No slants, no hooks, no switch routes. Folks, if there was a hot route, or if Garrett had called a competent play knowing that LSU was bringing pressure, Clemson not only converts on that fourth down, go watch the tape. They may score. There was so much space on that field. The fact that they were conservative, the fact that they ran basically Madden playbook type plays was unflippin' real. And it reminds me of years past, the few years past, since Garrett Riley has been the OC there. He starts the season out conservative. Look at the playoff game versus Texas last year. And I'm starting to get a little bit fired up because I'm sorry, that was a putrid game plan. On that first drive, Clemson comes out slinging the football. Clemson comes out with a little bit more tempo, a little bit more schematic moxie. Cade has something like 50 or 60 passing yards at the end of that first drive. I think that was the primary difference of the game because if Garrett called that game like he called the Texas game last year, and if he was more savvy in terms of, okay, they've been bringing five or they've been rushing six, we need to have quick routes to beat this blitz. Clemson wins that game. Miami, Notre Dame. Culture and identity. Now, Marcus Freeman had established that very quickly in South Bend. And we saw that last year. I think what carried them through the playoffs, what allowed them to beat Penn State, very similar to Ryan Day. Marcus Freeman and Ryan Day are very similar head coaches, very similar cultures. Toughness, discipline, tradition. I've been very skeptical and very critical of Cristobal in those regards. Recruiting A plus, but they were too loosey goosey. And that's bit them in the arse multiple times, reasons why they have never made the playoffs under Cristobal yet. That all changed. Cristobal's team looked to have equal amounts of fire, equal amounts of toughness. Hard Rock was rocking. This was a very encouraging sign if you're a Miami fan. I think you could feel assured that the U has a championship culture now. Now to get into some reasons why Miami won. It's pretty simple, folks. Pretty damn simple. The Hurricane defensive line was severely not only outplaying the Notre Dame offensive line, but they were beating them routinely with 3-man and 4-man rushes. Standard, non-blitzing, very quickly we're beating these tackles, very quickly we're beating these guards. Ruben Bain, boy, he's going to be a top 20 pick. That guy has improved so much. This Miami veteran defensive line, Mesidor and Bain, I mean, these guys have been here for what seems like 4 or 5 years. They really dismantled, particularly on that last drive, with a 3-man rush. That Miami D was getting after it, beating this Irish offensive line to a pulp. This Miami defensive line we could see coming for a few years now, highly ranked recruits, progressively becoming better and better, but that was really the difference of this game. All Miami has needed over the last couple years is identity and culture. Honestly, seems like they found that. I guarantee y'all, guarantee it. This year's playoffs is going to be much closer than it was last year. I think this year the portal has really leveled out in terms of where recruits are going. There's no more Nick Saban type teams. There's no more Chip Kelly Oregon Ducks of the West Coast in the 2010s. Like transfers are dispersing to the Texas Techs of the world, to the Tulanes of the world, equally as much as they are to the Texases of the world, to the LSUs of the world. So there's more parity. What it's going to come down to this entire year, too, not just in the playoffs, culture and identity. That's it for this week. We'll check back in for more observations soon.